I just wanted to film a video right now on how I study for my pathophysiology modules or units in nursing school. Currently doing my upgrade from my RPN/LPN, depending on where you are in Canada, to my RN, so my Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And so because I'm already a nurse in Canada and I've already been through a nursing program in Canada, I've studied a lot of this material already. It's just this program we go a lot more in depth at cellular levels. A module that we're on right now in patho is cancer. I have solely been doing majority of my studying on this iPad, and it's been actually not as bad and terrible as I thought it would have been. I've tried to do strictly laptop notes before and it never really works out for me. I would print off slides, I write notes. I'm very detailed with written notes. And so I've kind of scrapped this for my iPad, and it's nice to just have everything on the iPad. I can travel around with it, and at any time I have a free moment to study, then I can just open up the GoodNotes app. Everything's there with me. I'm not lugging around textbooks and notebooks. I just want to point out as well, before you start watching into this video, I've actually already completed majority of the things that I need to do for this module. So I wanted to give you an example of the process that I have laid out for myself. With my school, regardless of the pandemic happening or not, this pathophysiology course would have been delivered online anyways. And then once every 2 or 3 weeks, we would have physically gone into the school to have a tutorial where the instructor would just very quickly run through the material that we already should have done asynchronously at home. And so the learning outcomes or the learning aims of the module will be posted here. So this gives me an idea of the outcomes that the teacher is expecting me to know by the end of me completing this module. And then obviously that will relate into testing and exams come that time. Unfortunately, this module, the way that it was set up with my university is that you can't download them, you can't save them, you can't put them into a PowerPoint, PDF, anything like that. It's literally just an online module. And so the only thing I found to work for me over the past 2 years is to individually take a screenshot of every single image for the module that comes up and then write the corresponding notes beside it in a Word document. So I can slowly go through and listen to the lecture in the slides. It plays through. Cancer is used interchangeably. It's really staticky though. I can't really hear anything and it just kind of drags everything out. And sometimes they speak too quickly, sometimes it's too slow. I can't speed up the pace of the voices, so that's just what it is. The fortunate thing though is that over here there is a notes section and it has verbatim the script of the lecturer. So typically this is what my screen would look like. I'd have it in a half screen, open up the notes and then just copy word for word exactly what is in the document. And a lot of times, if I'm being honest, this is just a very autopilot thing, and I know I'm not going to be retaining a lot of information. For time's sake for this video, 16 pages later, I have all of these slides from this document. Some of you might be wondering, well, why am I just copying things over verbatim and not actually just studying directly from the module and taking notes from there? Yes, technically that is a very, very smart thing to do and it works. However, I know for the way my school is set up and with the quizzes that we do afterwards, that if I can have everything written word for word how the teacher or the instructor has presented it in the slides, and come quiz time, if something very specific is asked of me, then I can go in and look directly into those notes and see exactly how the teacher has laid it out or how they wanted it to be presented. And I can use that in my benefit to help me with the quiz. And then later on, I'll take this document basically as my textbook and I will condense those notes further from there through highlighting. It's a long process, what I do, but I find that it's repetitive and it's the best way for information to sink in for me. And I'm kind of taking things from a macro level and bringing it right down condensed to a micro level. And I just keep condensing along the way, but I want to have the bulk of the information there from the start. That way, if I need to refer back to an idea that I see on a smaller page later closer to exams when I'm studying, I can say, hey, I got this from such and such module at this time. Let me just look at the full thing to see what information I'm missing or what I need to study further. So what I do with the Pages document, by the way, I also export that as a PDF and I import it into the GoodNotes app as well. The next thing that I would start doing here is just go to my tutorial activities, and these are where my teacher posts the slide deck for her presentation that we're now doing over Zoom. So I'm gonna open up this document and then I'm gonna shrink them down. To import a slide deck like this into GoodNotes, I actually just go into print. I will do a grid view, 4 slides per page, save as a PDF, and then I will then import that PDF document. I prefer to work with PDFs and it makes it a lot easier to write on. That's the next step, is just to have this prepared on my iPad before the lecture, and then that way as the lecture starts I can just start writing along just like as I would if I was in school. So let's just pretend that I have my lecture right now. My teacher's talking, she asked for a question. A female client has an abnormal dysplasia result on her pap smear. How would the RN best describe dysplasia? So this is something like in a class setting or in Zoom, for example, the teacher asks the questions, we respond to it via poll. For myself, I know that this answer is actually D. The other thing that I do that I have found to be very, very, very helpful is to record my lectures. I just place my phone out, sit it at the desk, and then I just listen to them talk. I can play it just while like I'm cleaning things up, like just to reinforce knowledge. Fast forward, let's pretend that I just did the entire lecture with my teacher. You can see that these are the notes that I took during the lecture. I do use a lot of shorthand. I've made up my own shorthand over the years, mixed with different medical terms and stuff like that, just things that make sense to me, because at the end of the day, I'm the one reading my notes. I don't really care if anyone else can read it. So I can see here that my cancer lecture notes from the tutorial that I did with my teacher on Zoom is here, and then as well as the asynchronous learning that we did with the modules where I typed everything out. Those pages are all listed under here as well. And then this is what I would refer back to. Now, I haven't gone over my cancer notes yet and done the highlights that I need to for this module, but I'm just going to show you an example. Here you can see that I've gone in and I've highlighted. I have multiple different types of highlights for different things. I've used the same system since high school and it has worked for me. I know when I'm looking at notes, certain colors my eyes will divert to because it means certain things. Yeah, so you can see my notes get very colorful. Client with chronic cancer pain has been receiving opiates for 4 months. She rated the pain as 8 out of 10 on the pain scale before starting the opiate medication. Following thorough examination, there is no new evidence of increased disease, yet the pain is still close to 8 again. The most likely explanation for the increasing pain is, so we have a placebo effect has decreased. I know right off the bat, it's not that a placebo effect has decreased, because for one, the question didn't mention anything to do with the placebo, and two, I'm not sure why you would give a cancer patient a placebo medication for pain treatment unless that was otherwise specified due to like a research thing that was going on. So A is out of the question. Then we have B, development of an addiction to the opioids. So again, with this question, with the information that's been presented to me, there's no evidence to support that there's an addiction to any of the opioids that they're taking. All we know is that right now she's likely just built up a tolerance to it. You see withdrawal from the opioid. Again, no evidence to support that she's having any withdrawal symptoms. All we know is that there's no new cancer progression showing, but the pain is still at the same it was when she first started the medication about 4 months ago. And so that leaves me with my last possible answer, which would be D, and that is tolerance to opioid. So that's what I said earlier, is that she likely just has a tolerance buildup of the opioids. We know that for narcotics, after use for so long, your body just builds up a tolerance for it and you kind of need to keep bumping up the dose. That's a whole other topic for a whole other day. There's so many things that go into that. The answer for this is D. Question number 1 is relatively very easy to answer. So I wouldn't even refer back to my notes for something like this. I could just to see if the teacher has said anything about that. But I know just from this 16-page document, there's nothing in here to do with opioids. So honestly, the first question here is just solely just based on nursing knowledge and experience and clinical experience that we've had. So question number 2 here is a reference on a patient's chart to a T1N0M0 stage malignancy means the patient what? So I know that in this module, I've already gone through and we actually discussed staging. And so I can look for that directly in my document. This is a perfect example of when to use this. So I'm actually just gonna type in T1 and I can see here, it brings me over to the staging malignant tumors or the TNM classification. Again, just because this is something that I've kind of already studied just by doing the note itself, I can go through a process of elimination. If I was really uncertain, because these are open book quizzes, I could always just open up Google and do a quick Google search. Unless you know what you're looking for, you have a general idea of what an answer should be, I don't recommend going to Google for a lot of medical things, just because you can get a variety of different information, and to fact check all of that, I mean, that's on you. The next question here, this is something I'm not even gonna go into the written notes for. I'm just gonna go straight into the lecture notes that I did with my teacher over the Zoom call, because I know we discussed that in the lecture. So my answer to this question is gonna be G0, and I've kind of confirmed that one way already with this diagram. The other thing that I can do is just type in G0, because I know I did that at some point. So after mitosis, daughter cells go into a state of dormancy known as the G0 phase. The cells are not actively proliferating. I kind of just have my answer from there. I just continuously do this, and I go through all of the questions, and I'm honestly just gonna keep doing this back and forth, referring to previous nursing experience, knowledge, the notes from the lecture, because it's directly in there from what the teacher asked, and then the stuff from my lecture note as well. If all else fails, and this is honestly like a cheater's note, and I highly, highly, highly don't recommend doing this for any type of medical program on a consistent basis, just because, I mean, you can cheat your way through a medical program, but when it comes down to it and you actually have someone's life in your hand, you need to know what you're doing, and cheating your way through studying, you're not gonna help that person if they're dying in front of you. So you actually need to know what you're doing. However, with that being said, Quizlet's the one typically that I go to. It's free. Type in your question onto Google. Sometimes it's there word for word, sometimes it's not. Myself, for example, I completed this entire quiz and I wanted to go back just to verify my answers. And so I actually found an entire Quizlet of all of the questions that was in the question pool for this quiz. So that kind of worked in my favor. The other thing too is just to be careful of, some of the questions on Quizlet might be slightly different from what your teacher's question is. Many a times had quizzes where I truly didn't know the answer to some questions and they were not Googleable. So, I mean, it happens. That's why you should rely on your notes, lectures, studying, clinical experience, things like that. Don't rely on Google. I also use Quizlet on my phone. I have the app, and I sometimes just flip through them per the unit that I've worked on, just to refresh my memory on things, and it's a great way to learn as well. Here's another example for question number 6. Which of the following is the most reliable early indicator of an infection of a client who is neutropenic? Key thing from this question that I need to know is, what does neutropenic mean? If I had already gone through and highlighted everything on the iPad, this is where those colors that I was talking about would stand out to me. It's just a quick way to do a search and find within your own notes. Neutropenic. So maybe neutropenia is probably what I wrote. There we go. So neutropenia is described as a dangerously or abnormally low count of neutrophils in the bloodstream. I know that white blood cells are an indication of an infection, like a high white blood cell count, and typically the way that manifests in the person would be as a fever. So that's how I would just go ahead and answer that question. And yeah, so 10 out of 10, that's how I do my studying. I got 100% of this quiz, 2% towards my grade, cool. And I'm just gonna go ahead and actually do all the highlights on my notes now on the iPad, and I will get back to you.
Can I go to Nana Papa's?
Sure. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully that was a little bit helpful. You've learned some tips and tricks, and see you in the next one.